Hi, welcome to Thoughtful Thursday. This is your host, Mae Renfroe, and I'm excited with another guest today, uh, Paula Hill. So I'm excited what she's going to be sharing with us. And last week I had on Tanya Manley, and they're friends
Yeah.
and both uh, fellow moms of child loss. So again, I'm sorry that is the situation, but I'm excited that you're going to share our story because there is hope in your story too. So as you walk us through your
Mhm.
story, I'm excited just what you're doing, like with your friend Tanya. And so, Paula, just big welcome here today, and you can go ahead and introduce yourself more. I don't really have a lot of know much about your family, but I'm excited to know more, and then you can share us your story.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to be able to tell my son's story and to bring hope to others that are walking in darkness. So I just want to thank you for taking the time out to have me on as well. So,
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really
um,
appreciate it.
so I am Paula Hill. I am married to my husband for 22 years, Brian, and we have three children, in which he raised. They are not biologically his. Um, Austin is our middle child. He was our rebel. He came into this world blue and not breathing, and I knew from day one that he was just going to be that child that, was going to challenge me, and he was. He was very different than my three others. He loved his siblings. As they were growing up, I would always tell them, when I'm gone, you only have the three of you. So, um, our families growing up were kind of toxic, so to speak. And so, family size is small. And so, I've always told my kids, it's just you guys, support one another regardless of how things go. Just, if you need to separate for a little while, come back and talk. And
Mhm,
that's an important part of the story because he was not speaking to one of his siblings when he did pass. um
mhm.
so Austin came into this world. He was a rebel, like I said, blue and not breathing. At 3 weeks old, he was hospitalized with kidney failure, and
Mhm.
he just
Oh,
overcame all the
wow.
challenges that
Yeah.
he faced. And then he became this bright child that had such a loving heart growing up
Oh,
in
wow.
elementary school. Super smart to the point that I was like, okay, let's go get you tested to see where you're at academically. Um, at age 4, he had an IQ of a 130. And so I knew
Oh,
that kid was going to be, doing big things. And growing up, he told me he wanted to be a tattoo artist at the age of 7. I told him at the time, that wasn't the thing. And I was like, no, you're gonna need to find a day job and do that on the side. But we'll come to that when it comes. Um, During middle school and high school, those were our biggest struggle years. He did struggle with mental health, depression and anxiety. He was diagnosed with ADHD, and so those were huge challenges.
yeah.
And he he got through the whole ADHD part, but the depression and the anxiety kind of lingered. And as he got older and he found out, who he was, he had a hard time finding uh, a group of people that can accept him because he was that kid that would try anything and everything. He had no limitation. He had no fear.
Yeah.
And I think it was right around the end of high school that he started to find like the car club and the guys that he would eventually do life with, which was awesome. He literally didn't know if he was going to graduate until 2 days before graduation.
Oh, wow.
He took
Oh,
risks. My kid was a
yeah.
risk
Yeah.
taker.
Yeah.
And I love
Oh,
that about him. I loved it. I mean, at the time I didn't, but as I watched him grow and um, do his thing in life where I wasn't, around and it was just him making the decisions. I love seeing him take new things to a whole new level.
yeah.
So he graduated and he found just a job and would work, and he'd find another job that paid more, and he'd go to another job, and he'd hang out with his friends in the car club. And uh, it wasn't until probably 20 that he was like, I really just need to settle down. He wound
Mhm.
up meeting a girl who was 10 weeks pregnant, and he didn't tell us. He was really scared to tell,
Mhm.
especially me,
Mhm.
tell me. Um,
Mhm.
Basically, he didn't want me to judge him, and he didn't want me to think that he just had a one night stand and she was pregnant. And so it took him a little while to tell me. And he said, Mom, my girlfriend is pregnant. She's 10 weeks pregnant, and no, it's not mine. And I was like, son, it is what it is. And so they
Mhm.
eventually had our granddaughter, and I
Mhm.
saw this kid go from this free flowing kid, do what I want to do, to becoming this amazing dad. And
Mhm. Oh,
I was
wow.
just wowed. I was wowed by the
Mhm.
love that he had for this
Mhm.
child.
Mhm.
Which is, I mean, my husband was a huge example. So I'm grateful that he watched what my husband did and looked up to him, even though in those
Mhm.
moments that he was growing up, it didn't look like he was. And
Yeah, it can be that way. They don't look like,
yeah,
but they're, watching
yeah,
and
they
learning,
they butted
from their
heads
example.
so bad.
Yeah.
They didn't bond very well until later in like the high school
Mhm.
years when he started to do the car scene and things like that.
Mhm.
Because before that, he was into art and music and tennis, and none of us we didn't
Oh,
understand
okay.
any of that. So he was the different kid. Um,
Yeah.
so he settled down, and they moved in together, and they had our granddaughter, and we call her Grand Princess. So if you see posts saying Grand Princess,
Okay.
that's who we're
Yeah.
talking
Oh.
about. um,
Aw.
they got married, and he then went into this motorcycle scene. He wanted a motorcycle, and he'd buy junkers, fix them up, and sell them, and buy another junker and fix it up. And he worked his way up to what he wanted. And at that point, he bought himself a Harley. And it was
Yeah.
a friend of
Okay.
his, a really good friend of his, who didn't want it anymore, and they worked a deal. And so, spring, summer, and fall, he loved his Harley. If it wasn't too hot and it wasn't too cold, he was on it. Even
Mhm.
on the hot summer days, I'm pretty sure I remember getting phone calls to where he was like, "Mom, I rode today and it was so hot. Like that helmet suffocates me." And I'm like, "Nope, wear your helmet." You know,
Yeah.
it was always one of my biggest fears for my kids to own motorcycles. Even my husband. We live
Yeah.
in a pretty busy city. Phones are a distraction nowadays,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
hear about all these horrific things in the news about the motorcycle accidents that are happening in our area, and I didn't want that to be my kid. And on that day, it was a very different kind of day because my daughter lived about 30 minutes from us.
Mhm.
They are a one car family, so her husband normally took the car to work. And that day she happened to need the car to meet my daughter-in-law to go get
Mhm.
her driver's license changed over to her married name, because COVID and all of that. They had long wait lines and months of waiting to have all that taken care of.
Mhm.
So they
Yeah.
finally had an opportunity, and she was going to this town that she'd never been to. So my daughter in law was taking her because she knew the town. And halfway to this appointment, their car starts to overheat. And they call my husband, and he was like, turn the heat on and, turn back around and get back to the house. And, excuse me. And you'll just have to go another day. So my
Mhm.
daughter, they get back to their house, and my daughter comes over to our house, and she's frustrated. So I'm like, well, come run errands with me. We'll go have lunch, and then by that time, you can go pick up your husband. And we did all of that. We came back, and my husband had actually had that day off, which is very odd because he works 12-hour days, 6 days a
Mhm.
week. Excuse me. And he came in to relax in our media room, and my daughter was getting ready to leave, and I was laying down relaxing. It was kind of a hot day, so the heat had gotten to me a little bit. And my husband's phone rings, and it's my daughter-in-law's ringtone. So he answers the phone, and he's like, "What's going on? Are you good?" And it was her dad.
Mm.
And he said, "No, I'm not good. There's been an accident." And he's like, "Oh no." And of course, you're like, "Well, what hospital do I need to go to, or what's going on?" And I don't
Mhm.
remember the whole conversation because a lot of it is still very blurry to me.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember him saying Austin. And so my husband said that her dad said, "It's Austin. He's been in a motorcycle accident and he did not make it."
Mhm.
And he's like, "Okay, I'll call you back." And by that time, he's in complete shock. I'm like, "What's going on?" I'm across the hall, so we're kind of yelling to one another.
Mhm.
And he's
Mhm.
in such shock that he comes in there and he's like, "Austin, Austin, Austin's dead." And I was like, "What? No, like my Austin? No,
Yeah.
And my youngest son at the time was living with a girlfriend who we were not on speaking terms with him because of this girlfriend. And I was like, "I have to call Sean. I have to call Sean." And my daughter was here, and she was like, "I have to call my husband. I have to call my husband." Because at that point, she was supposed to go pick him up, and she couldn't drive. And
Mhm.
so I said, "What's going on?" And my husband kind of, from what I can remember briefly, was like, "I don't have all the details. I just know he was in a motorcycle accident and he didn't make it. He was on his way home from work." And so I was like, "Well, I have to go to the police department. I have to know what's going on." Like, I didn't believe it.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
And then my daughter goes outside to make her phone call. And the only thing I do remember is I do know I called my son and I told him that his brother was dead. I didn't do it in a very, it wasn't that I didn't want to, it was the shock. I don't think people realize
Mhm.
that shock, you have no control what comes out of your mouth.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I later regretted that. I really wish I could have told him in a more loving way. Um, and I've, of course, apologized profusely to him since then. Because that tends to stick stuck. How you found out your brother or your son passed away stay stuck
Mhm.
in your memory.
Mhm.
And I remember just being on the hallway floor. My husband nowhere to be found. He's, doing something. My daughter's outside, and I'm just bawling. I'm screaming. I'm gushing. And that's all I
Mhm.
remember.
Yeah.
And then we get in the car. My youngest son gets here. My daughter waits for her husband. We get in the car and we drive to Godley, Texas, where the accident
Mhm.
happened. And we find out that he had left work, and he was literally at the halfway point of his drive home where it happened. He left work early, which he drove concrete trucks, so they start at night and they end in the morning or early afternoon. And so he was driving home, just enjoying his day, and I guess he was trying to pass a big rig. And at some point, he was in a passing zone, but when he made impact with a head-on vehicle, he was not in a passing zone. And so the accident happened about, I think the report said 11:48. We were not notified until like 3 something in the afternoon. So it had been quite a few hours.
Oh, wow. Wow,
Um,
that is.
well, he was married, so I'm not the first of kin anymore. His wife is, and his wife also has the right to make all the ending decisions and, get his personal belongings and whatnot. So, um, I'm grateful that they called me and they didn't have a state trooper or a city official on our doorstep.
Yeah,
I think that them calling us was way better than getting that knock on the door.
yeah,
And
yeah. I
so,
imagine it would be. Yeah.
yeah, and so I'm at the police department. I'm asking questions that, of course, I'm sure he's never thought a mother would ask. I mean, I went into detail. Is he decapitated? Is he, all kinds of questions. I was that helicopter mom when they were growing up. That I did everything for them. And so I had control issues, and oddly enough, about a month and a half before Austin passed, I was in a program called Celebrate Recovery, and I was working
Mm-hmm.
on childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And we had amazing conversations with our kids during that time frame. And one of those for me was just apologizing for being the mother that I was. I yelled a lot rather than what they call soft parenting now. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I yelled. I reverted to "don't do that," So I had conversations with Austin, and about a month and a half before his passing, we had one of those conversations multiple times where I
Oh,
apologized for not being who he needed, and um, I loved that he said, "Mom, you did what you could with what you had, and you were the best mom that I could."
oh.
And so having those sweet conversations really have helped as well in my journey. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but a month and a half before in Celebrate Recovery, I actually released my control.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he was 24. Yes, he was married. Um, but I felt like I needed to control things. And
Mm-hmm.
so I said, okay, God, they're yours. Like, you gave them to me temporarily. Do with what you need. But at the same time, I was praying, God, but what is my purpose? Because I became the mother that I didn't have, so I poured into my children. I
Mm-hmm.
identified in my children. And so God gave me a purpose by taking Austin home. And although that hurts,
Yeah.
my son doesn't suffer from mental health. Um, he doesn't have to endure what society has become. We had conversations 6 months prior where he's in the backyard and, we're talking. And I always was on him about like wearing your helmet, wear your gear, don't do stupid stuff. You have a kid now. And
Mm-hmm.
he would always tell me,
Mm-hmm.
Mom, I'm 25. I'm almost 25. At the time, he passed 13 days into his 25th birthday. Ironically, 13 is his favorite number.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so he would tell us all the time, Mom, if I die today, I die a happy man. I know where I'm going. We live now 50, 60 years old, not 80 anymore.
Yeah.
And this world is
Yeah.
going to hell, and I can't change it by myself.
Yeah.
So I'm living life to the fullest so that when I do go, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
And so
Good.
having those
Oh,
conversations really kind of helped me through my grieving. I mean, I'm not saying it took away any of my pain because I still hurt daily. I still relive things. But knowing that he was so confident in his
yeah.
faith and he
Wow.
was not scared to die.
Yeah.
Um, so on that day, going
Oh.
to the police department and asking the hard questions and whatnot, really, honestly, I don't even know all the questions I asked. But I do know some of them. And the officer's like, I can't answer that for you. And I'm like, no, like, you will
Mhm.
answer. I
Mhm.
need to
Mhm.
know.
Yeah. Oh,
Unfortunately, due to the condition of his body, we were unable to view him or see him at all. They had to identify him by his fingerprints. And I think that is a hard thing for me to walk with every day because I
yeah.
never got to see my son.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was someone holding his hand on the side of the road when this happened? Was someone with him? Now he did pass on impact according to the coroner report, so I am thankful for that. But at the same time, it is my son,
Yeah.
and
For sure.
so the woulda, shoulda, couldas, the what ifs, the questions that I always have in my head are the things that I battle.
Mhm.
Because I know battle that I know that he's in heaven and he's safe and okay.
Mhm.
Uh, so proceeding on, we did a memorial, a celebration of life. We
Mhm.
contacted his bio dad, and he came out, and his wife didn't want to do anything until she had his ashes, which I totally respect. But I had an ex husband coming into town and nothing planned, and so I asked if we can do a celebration of life. They were all invited. They actually were able to be the one to pick the day.
Oh wow.
And, it was between this day and this day. And, I was like, oh, I don't know what if they can make it. Let me ask. So my
Mhm.
husband had a lot of correspondence with her mom and her dad. And we made it on a Thursday. And they were going to put us in this area where there's like 150 people to celebrate him, and that's great. But I was like, I kind of feel like we need a little bit more space.
Mhm.
They're like,
Mhm.
well, if we put you in the big sanctuary, you're gonna have all these people, but yet it holds 2,500, so you're not gonna feel like there's a lot of people there.
Mhm.
So they put us in the youth area, which was great because Austin used to attend youth every once in a blue moon.
Oh.
And it held 500 in that room. Well, we had standing room only.
Oh wow.
It was a beautiful,
Wow.
beautiful service. Um,
Wow.
from what I remember, there's a lot I don't remember. I do know that we picked worship songs that he self-taught himself how to play the guitar because I
Mm.
refused to pay for anything that he couldn't be committed to because he was one
Mhm.
of those kids, he'd start
Yeah.
something and not finish it.
Yeah.
So self-taught in the guitar. So he had he loved the song Oceans and You Won't Relent and just different
Oh.
songs. And so Break Every Chain. And so these are songs
Oh, I
that
love it.
I know, right? And so my kids picked the
Mhm.
songs, and
Mhm.
I asked my church, and they took care of everything. I didn't have to do a thing.
Mhm.
And we celebrated him, and it was beautiful. And then a couple months, about 3 months in, our community of hundreds of people that were with us for at least 3 weeks from 9 a.m. to almost midnight. I mean, our community was incredible. We didn't have to mow our grass. We didn't have to worry about food. We didn't, but then it
Oh.
slowly started to die down. And
Yeah.
then people didn't want to talk to us because all we did was talk about Austin. A lot of people are not used to people talking about their loved ones that have moved on. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Mhm.
and I know that's hard,
Mhm.
and I know people don't
Mhm.
understand that, but it's also hard for us that are grieving. So
Mhm.
we were driving down the road. Our community went from hundreds to maybe 50, very small circle. Driving down the road to pick up our granddaughter. She lives 45 minutes away. And I looked at my husband and I said, I hear God telling me that we need to start a foundation. And he just kind of looked at me like, I'm sorry, what? And I was like,
Yeah.
I hear him saying we need to build community like us so
Mhm.
that they don't feel alone like we
Mhm.
do.
Mhm.
And he's like, so what does that look like? And I was like, I don't have the details. I don't know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
let's figure this out. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And so I quickly got
Oh.
on and was texting a lot of his friends that were still in communication from the car scene. And I was like, hey, this is an idea I have. And they all loved it. They were like, yes. As I start thinking of a name, and we'll vote on a name, and then we'll get started on however we do this. And they all picked out names. And by November, I was ready to go to the crash site. Thanksgiving was one of his most favorite holidays. And so one of his really good friends made a cross out of some road ties or something. And beautiful. He stained it and everything. So we all met the weekend of Thanksgiving there at the crash site. And they all had names. And I looked at my husband and I said, I don't know how to tell them this, but none of their names have like really triggered my heartstrings. And we had been talking about what we wanted to name it. And he says, okay, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, I really want to name it Austin Sunshine Foundation.
Mhm.
And he goes, okay, what does that word mean? What does that title mean to you? And I said, well, base it off of his TikTok, his positive energy of how he thought about passing, and
Mhm.
bring light to other people's darkness.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, that makes sense.
Oh,
Let's do it.
yeah. Yeah.
And so he broke it to them the day that we were doing the
Okay.
memorial and told them, hey, look, Paula thinks this should be the name, and this is how she feels about it. And so they agreed. They were like, oh yeah, it's great.
Okay.
And then we put his cross at the memorial site, and I started the paperwork, and by February of 2023 it was official. And I started just doing legwork on trying to find families that are losing young adults 18 to 26 in our county. I've kind of spread it out to the outer counties a little bit because automobile and motorcycle accidents around here are just, unfortunately, way too often do they happen. 3 a day,
Oh, really?
maybe.
Oh, my. Oh,
And the thing
that.
is like when you look for support groups, you have support groups for like genetics, for children that have genetic issues
Mhm.
or cancer,
Mhm.
but you never find support groups for parents that have adult children, young adult children. And so, being that Austin was 13 days into his 25th birthday, we help people 18 to 26.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we will do memorial signs, we'll do meals, we'll find resources for, helping them pay their bills or mental health, getting them some counseling, whatever it is. And we actually have actually gone out to a lady's daughter's service, and I held her hand.
Oh,
Sweet
wow.
lady. I heard the accident from my living room. It happened on a busy road,
Oh,
just down the road from me, and I heard it that night, and I heard all the sirens, and I looked at my husband and I said, "That doesn't sound good." And I happened to be on social media that night, and there it was. People were saying what the ages were, so I instantly started trying to do some research. Well, the night before the girl's service, her memorial service, I found the mom.
okay.
And I
Oh,
reached out and I said, I know you probably have all these people reaching out to you, so I don't want to bombard you. But when you're ready, this is who I am. This
yeah.
is what happened to me. And I told her Austin's story. And I said, when you're ready, I'm here to talk. I'm
Yeah.
here to
Oh,
just,
wow.
I'm here to sit and listen to you. I don't
Yeah.
have to talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you need a meal, if whatever you need, just, I'm here. And she actually
Wow.
reached out right away. And I was like, oh, wow. And I said, I heard the services tomorrow and I would like to come and support you. And she's like, oh, you don't have to do that. I said, no, I don't, but I want to because I
Yeah.
want you to feel seen. I want you to feel loved and I want you to feel heard. Because in those moments, we don't feel that.
Oh,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Yeah. No.
And
Mhm.
and it's the first service that I went to since Austin's. So I knew I was going to be, emotional.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But we walked in and we sat at the back, and I let everybody that knew them say their thing. And before it started, I walked up there and I looked at her and I said, "So and so, I'm Paula." I said, "We talked last night." And she just gave me the biggest hug and just started weeping. And I said, "I'm here." She says, "I can't believe you're here." I said, I told you I would be here. I said, "I
Yeah.
don't know you." I said, "But I can't wait to hear the stories." And
Oh,
so I
wow.
hugged her, told her I was going to be in the very back if she needed me, just to tell me to come up there,
Yeah.
whatever. And we literally have walked this journey together. She just passed
Uh-huh.
1 year in April,
Yeah.
and we have walked this journey together. I went and got the memorial sign put up within a month and a half. The city was great about it. And she doesn't go out there often. She doesn't pass that area if she doesn't have to. And so I would take pictures. We go out there and we put new little decorations up that might be on sale at Hobby Lobby
Mhm.
or something. And
Mhm.
that's what my son would do. He would give the shirt off of his back to somebody
Oh,
in need. And so I'm just want to bring the light to someone's darkness, to let them know they're not alone. And yes, I'm 20, almost 23 months in. July 12th will be 23 months. His passing is August 12th, so that's the 2-year mark. His birthday is July 30th. And so yeah, I mean,
oh,
these
wow.
coming weeks are going to be tough ones for me, but I have women that know how I feel
Yeah.
because of this community that we started to build, that I'm not going to be alone.
Yeah.
And that's the purpose of building this community, because it's not something that's normalized. It's not something people talk about. Um, I have another lady I'm walking with. She's wanting to do her master's in mental health, but specialized in trauma and bereavement. And when she was doing interviews and, they were asking her questions, and she was telling them what she's doing and the group that, we formed, and
Mhm.
they were taking notes. We need to normalize.
Yeah.
We need we need to normalize bereavement. We need
Yeah.
to have more support out there. So many moms didn't have the support, don't have the support, and unfortunately feel so lost.
Yeah.
And while this is not an easy journey to walk, and our part of our soul has been taken from us, we can still get through it. We're never going to get over it. I
Yeah.
use the
Oh, yeah.
analogy. I use the analogy. It's like a backpack. You've got, your gear, and you're going on a hike, and the gear is heavy. You got lots of water, your ropes, your, extra shoes, whatever. And when you're getting up that cliff and you're shifting to grab a rock, that stuff in your backpack is shifting. It's just like our grief. We're
Mhm.
going to carry it at all times, but there's going to be days that it's lighter because we're walking straight. And then there's going to be days to where we shift, and all of a sudden that stuff shifts too. And
Mhm.
it's heavy. And that's where you need your community. I believe transparency is huge. I don't ever want to tell someone I'm okay and I'm not okay. If you're asking me, then I'm going to be real with you. And if you can't handle my realness, I understand, you can keep walking. Um, but I'm never going to go. I used to at the beginning. I used to say, "Oh yeah, I'm fine,
Yeah.
great." I walked into church on a Sunday, and he passed on Friday. Literally, like that Sunday, I was in church. People were like,
Mm.
"How are you here?" I'm like, "Cause I need to be. I need the
Yeah.
community. I need
Yeah.
Are you doing okay?" I'm like, "Oh, I'll answer minute by minute, hour
Mhm.
by hour, day by day, depending on how I'm feeling." I'm honest. And I know people can't
Yeah.
handle that, and that's okay,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to lie about it.
Yeah. No, that's
So
good.
We do. Once I met Tanya, we were joining somebody else's Zoom for grief, and we called her. Well, she takes 7 weeks. She does 7 weeks of Zoom calls, and then she takes like 4 or 5 weeks off. And we were on that last Zoom call, and I text Tanya later that evening, and I was like, "Hey, we need to talk. Like
Yeah.
I have an idea." And she's
Yeah.
like, "I think I know what your idea is." And so I was like, "How could you know what my idea is?" And sure enough, we call one another, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"This is my idea." And she's like, "Yeah, I knew you were going to go there." And
Yeah.
so
Oh, wow. That's
we
cool.
contacted the other lady who was doing Zooms and said, "Hey, you're off for 4 or so weeks, and would you feel disrespected if we started doing Zoom calls?" She's like, "No." She says, "There's so many grieving families. Like, I can't just help them myself."
Yeah.
And so I brainstormed and I sent her a few names of what we can call it. And the price of love is what grief is.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the price of love.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the logo is a heart that's made of a fingerprint. And that's because grief is like a fingerprint. Nobody's grief
Yeah.
is the same.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the
I
price
love
of love, was formed, and it's 6 weeks worth. We do, it's about an hour and a half. We do an educational piece, whether that, like, we just did one not too long ago on secondary grief. People don't realize when you lose someone, you then also lose a sense of yourself, or friends, or some people, when they lose a child, they can't work, they lose their home, they lose their income. That's all secondary grief.
Mhm. Oh,
So we
okay.
educate ourselves, and then we educate the grieving community. This is all free, and we volunteer. We do not get paid for it. We do not ask for donations. This is all stuff we've been doing on our time.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it
That's
has
amazing.
been it has been an average of 20 to 25 people every Thursday. I'm sorry, every Tuesday. And
Okay.
what I tell everybody is, it is a safe place. Who you see here, what is said here, stays here. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want anybody's stories being told unless they're telling them. They don't
Yeah.
have to participate. If they just want to sit there and listen, that is okay. Um, I just want them to know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And so that's how the price of love works. We do 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And we have life coaches on there. We have authors on there. We do an educational piece. Then we open it up to questions. Um, I have since, I hated school. I hated school. But I have since also been certified as a life coach slash grief coach.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and I'm furthering that even more.
Yeah.
I'm going to look for more education in the bereavement department, and not that I'm going to get a master's or a counselor. I just want to do coaching.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to educate myself so that I am doing justice to those that I'm working
Yeah.
with. Everybody's grief is different. Everybody's story is different. Um, and it all needs to be honored and handled with care.
Yeah. For
So,
sure.
Austin Sunshine
Oh,
it was formed, and off of that became the price of love. And so we're just bringing light into the
yeah.
darkness, and in honor of my son. Um, I will
Oh,
never not say his name. I
yeah.
will
Yeah.
live on telling his story so that his little girl, who we get every other weekend, she comes
Oh,
to the house and gets to talk about him and cry about him. And
oh,
um,
that's good. That's
we're
good
gonna
that she
continue
has that.
his legacy. Yeah, we're gonna continue his legacy. So that's where it
Oh,
all began, and I look forward to seeing what God's gonna do in my future.
yeah. Yeah. What he's continuing, will continue to do. Yeah, I like
Mhm.
that because he's still writing our story. It's not over.
Absolutely,
It's just beginning.
absolutely.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I
So
I like, yeah, you shared so many pieces that, it's so hard for you but
Mhm.
yet, God just met you in those spaces, and now how you're able to give hope and light and be there for
Mhm.
someone else. That's powerful. That's really amazing. And it's helping you in your healing because this is still new
Right.
for you.
Oh
23
yeah.
months. I remember from when, see, I'm 7 years now from losing our son. Our son was 2017. Um, so 2024, yeah, it's been 7 years. So he passed away 2 months short of his 15th birthday, which was June 14th. So in June 14th, it was, he would be 22 years
Mhm.
old. But
Mhm.
yeah, those early years and stuff. Yeah, really.
And I must say, I allowed God to guide me, but that doesn't mean my faith was 100%. I was angry.
Mm,
I was resentful.
yeah,
I just surrendered my children to you. God, they're yours. You gave them to me for a time when I was the one feeling in control. When I let go of that, you took Austin. And people are like, well, he technically didn't take him. Well, for me, God wrote his story. God knew when he would go be called
yeah,
home. You know what I'm
that's
saying?
right.
So when I say
Yeah,
God took him, God took him.
yeah,
Don't tell me how to look at my story, you know.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I I think that's a huge thing to really emphasize is I am very faithful. I love my God. I love how he's doing my story. Do I understand it all? Absolutely not.
Hmm.
I was angry. I was resentful. I was confused. I mean, there's emotions spinning,
Hmm. Oh yeah, I know that.
but I still had
Yeah,
to
yeah.
surrender and
Hmm.
allow him to do his work because
Hmm.
if I allow myself to do it, if I'm being completely honest with you, I wouldn't be here today.
Hmm.
I would have taken my own life.
Oh wow. Yeah,
I always swore if something happened to any of my kids, I'm going with them. So
yeah,
having God provide me the strength every day to get up
yeah,
and refocus myself and say, okay, instead of wallowing that you took him, I need to br- tell everybody about him. Bring
yeah,
light, you know,
yeah,
do your work so that they can see that it's okay.
yeah,
So,
yeah. This is and it gives you life. Yeah, it's
mhm,
so much this way, but it can be hard to really surrender that and just to realize
mhm.
that and just say, well, your will, Lord, not mine. It can
Right,
be hard. I know I really had a lot of struggles in that too, and just really finding it hard. And I'd always go to my mom or friends, different people, but my mom had once told me, she's like, but you do want God's will, though, May, you want God's will. So, and I
mhm,
did want God's will. I wanted my son here still, but I wanted God's will. But yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. You know, and my son told one of his very, very, very best friends. Um, Ironically, we were doing an event for Austin Sunshine Foundation, and his best friend told me, Mom, Austin knew 25 was the year.
Oh, wow.
He told me I won't live
Wow.
past 25. So
Wow. Yeah.
I believe you have that instinct at
Yeah.
times. People can have that. And I
Yeah.
believe he did. His words, even speaking to me, months prior, he knew, and I have to come to terms with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
A
you know,
piece of
I,
my
I,
a piece of my family is missing. Taking a family picture is not the same. The piece of the puzzle is definitely missing. The my heart, my soul has a hole the size of my son. Like, he had my DNA. So yes, I hurt. Yes, I my brain takes me to a whole different level of thought process when, you know, I'm having a bad day. I do spiral. But I have to remind myself it's a mindset thing to really focus. Okay, Paula, yes, there's good and there's bad, but you don't want to live in the bad. He would not want you there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So you go from the on that. Yeah. Wow. And I was gonna say we kind of had similar experience with our son talking about dying as well. He did. And he would even recently before that, well, one daughter has told me that he had to ask her, if I die, are you gonna cry? And then we had also, yeah, had a discussion of he was looking for a racing four wheeler. This was just a regular four wheeler that we had that he was on that with his accident, but he was looking for a racing four wheeler. And I was like, I don't think we approve of that. That's not something we can, allow because that sounds dangerous, right? And because we never treated them as toys. It was just to get from point A to point B, but not to rip
Right.
around. And he didn't on the hill where uh, looks like he didn't do that. But anyway, and so when I told him that, he's like, well, if it's my time to die, I'm just going to die. However, I could just be walking down the road when we go to town, sitting on the couch. He's like, well, it's my time to die. It's my time to die. And I said, well, you are right. And that, and when it's our time is in God's hands, which so, it could be next year, next month, next week. We don't know. And this was so close to his losing him. Like it was, I'm trying to remember, like, when was this? Was that morning? Like, I don't know even if it was a week, but it was in the last bit of time that we had with him that this conversation came up. And so he was
Wow.
good with whatever. Like, yeah, it was something so similar to what you're saying. And I think
Yeah.
I've heard that with others too, that it seems like they can kind of sense when their time is up. It's kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is like he lived with that anxiety. And the further he got to that date of his passing, the more anxious I noticed he was getting.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
So I don't know what that was about.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never will, but there's patterns. And when you sit back after the fact and you're able to really think about conversations and behaviors and, scenarios, you sit back and you're like, oh, that's why that happened. Or, oh, that conversation was had because of this,
Mhm.
and I do fear, my youngest son, he rides a motorcycle. You
Mm,
know, he didn't have one, and
mm,
then almost a year now, maybe yeah, almost a year. He's had a motorcycle,
mm.
and I'm always, of course, controlling again. Be careful. Wear your helmet. Don't speed. And I'm having to really work on that in counseling and figure out how to step back because he has no
Mhm.
fear either. He'll tell you,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't have a fear of dying. But
Oh,
this
wow.
mama, because she's already lost one, fears losing
Yeah,
another.
for sure. For sure you
Hmm.
do. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
that was hard for us too. Well, after we lost our son, I never ever thinking we'd ever lose a child, right? So then when we lost one, it's kind of like, oh my goodness, so that this is real. It can actually happen. So can someone else? And then
mhm.
the siblings too were kind of like, well, I might be next. And who's next? It was like
Mhm.
conversations and thoughts that never would have had before. Uh, but yeah, we started really cracking down on the things for our kids because they're all younger anyway. When they get older, yeah, they'll have if they want to go
I
and
was gonna say
uh,
mine are all older.
yeah. So see, we all had. So he was the second oldest of eight at the time. Now we have 10. The
Mm.
oldest is 25 on down, so 25, and then Clayton between 2 and then 18, and on down from there, or 19. And he's away from home. So now, but yeah, all the other ones are younger. That's on things so we can control. But yeah, what happened then after we lost Clayton, a couple years later, um, yeah, 2 years later, our son how old would he been? About 14, and he had an accident on a skidoo in the wintertime. We're up here in northern
Mm.
Alberta, Canada, and to cut his like skin here on his head really bad. Had to get 21 stitches like on up here. We really don't even know what happened. He doesn't even know what happened. The accident actually because he lost that memory. he honestly
Mhm.
lost some memory. He doesn't know. So anyway, after that, we're kind of like, okay, that's it. We're selling the skidoos. The four wheeler was left out in the woods from that son's accident, and then okay, that's it with the skidoos. We're done with this, So
Yeah.
they're young, It's just yeah, that's kind of what happened. Everyone
We
has to do
tend to
what
want to
works for them.
control. And Sean, he's going to be 25 in October. And so for me, you being on a motorcycle, you being almost 25, like I can't put that pressure on him. My thoughts are my thoughts. My fears are my fears. I can't control him. He's got I have to trust him to make those choices.
Hmm.
And God wrote his story. I didn't. So I'm trying to be acceptive of whatever happens.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, yeah. But one day at a time, one moment at a time. That's all that God asks of us, and He
Absolutely.
gives us His grace and mercy and strength new every
Mhm.
day. To walk it out, and yeah,
Yep. And
yeah.
that's why I feel as though being transparent and getting the help that you need is important, because it does help with those. If you have other children, it helps with all of that.
Hmm.
you know
Hmm.
um
Yep.
of course, you need to find the right therapist, because not everybody is for you, and it may take more than one try to find one. I mean, I had one where she told me on my second visit, "When are you going to start get over this? It's been a year." I'm
Mm.
sorry, what?
Yeah.
um and at
Yeah.
the I mean, I had a great counselor, but my insurance didn't accept her. So at the time I couldn't see her. And ironically, about a month later, after that incident that I had, my counselor became available to my insurance again. And
Oh
so
wow.
I called her right up and I said, "I'm in a really bad spot." I called her the day Austin passed, so she knew. She had been following me and checking
Yeah.
in and
Yeah.
whatnot. So for me, those thoughts, instead of voicing them to my surviving son, I take them to her. And I'm like, what do I do with this? So that's helpful.
Oh wow. Oh
Yeah.
wow. That would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
really good.
but yeah,
And now.
I mean, this is what the grief community is supposed to be like. Just talking about
Mhm.
your loved one, not feeling
Mhm.
judged, being seen, being heard.
Mhm.
Um, and Tanya, I love that Tanya does the podcast, because that's a way for people to tell their story
Mhm.
and not feel judged and heard. And we're all in different walks, like, but we can all support one another and all
Mhm.
love one another in a place that we don't feel loved.
Mhm.
So just saying,
Well, that's good.
hey, go to a counselor, or have an accountability partner, or
Mhm.
these supplements work for me, they may work for you. Like I'm doing supplements for the brain fog or whatever. And we have a lot of moms that say, "Oh, I don't know what to do, I forget everything." And so, no, we're not licensed professionals. We only talk out of experience. We're very transparent. We try to bring light to somebody's darkness and education,
Mhm.
and just to hold them up when they feel like they're falling down.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Really good. Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation, Paula, and
I thank
just
you for having me,
everything.
honestly,
Yeah.
and telling his story.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a hard journey, and still, you're still in this, but God is there with you. And you found your strength and
Absolutely.
peace in Him, and purpose, and your purpose through
Mhm.
this from your son Austin. And so I'm just thank you
Mhm.
for sharing him with us today, and all of these things I know will be a big help to others that is in the middle of it, and still very new in it. So I
Absolutely.
would,
Thank you for
yeah,
having me and allowing me to tell his story.
yes. Oh, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure. Do you have any things that you would like to share, like on the late? We can have your links. Anything else that you would want to kind of direct somebody to here
Yeah,
before we
so
close? Or
If they want to contact me, they can go to Austin Sunshine Foundation. There's a Facebook page for that. We're working on the website. If you're interested in any of the Zoom calls or coaching or anything like that, just reach out. We'll find resources for you. Just want to tell your story. I'm here to listen. Um, that's probably going to be the best way for now, is just
Yeah.
do the Facebook page of Austin Sunshine Foundation, and I will update that. And we post the Zooms. We have in-person meetings in the North Texas area, so we post those on there. When the website's complete, I'll post that on there so that there'll be access to that. They can also email me at info@Austin AUSTINS Sunshine SUNSHINE.org. And those will be the two ways that people can contact me.
Okay. Well, that sounds really good. All right. Well, you take care. All the best, Joe. All
Thank
that
you
you're
for
doing.
having me.
Thanks.
Bye bye.